Wow, guys, before we get into the video today, I just have to give you a huge thank you for sticking with me these last couple days during the bad weather here in Miami. You know, so many of you showed up to my live stream. You loved it. I loved it too. People tuned into the video I recorded inside my home office. And honestly, I thought you guys were going to hate it, especially after seeing stuff like this, which is why I'm out here as a huge thank you to show you just a beautiful day. This is a huge contrast, right? This is like the most beautiful Florida beach day anyone could ever ask for, which is a complete opposite of what we had a few days ago. Just wanted to bring you guys out here and show you this. It'd be criminal not to bring you out here on a day this beautiful and do a video here at the beach. As a big thank you for sticking with me with the indoor videos. And now I know in the future, if the weather's bad or something like that, I can just do it inside because you guys are there for the info and you're there for me. And I appreciate you and I'm here for you. One thing that's crazy, guys, is this condo crisis that's going on right now. It is just unbelievable, all the problems that we're having with this. And right now, it's gonna be getting harder and harder to get a mortgage on a condo because Fannie Mae has something called a condo blacklist. And it's basically kind of like an unofficial list because they kind of won't acknowledge that they actually have this list, but it is a real thing. And some lawyers up in, I think, Massachusetts got their hands on it. So I want to talk about what kind of implications this has if you want to buy a condo. Now, first of all, if you're trying to buy a condo and for whatever reason, the building that you're trying to buy in is on this condo blacklist and you're trying to get a conventional mortgage, you're not going to get it. You're going to get denied, and your only options are going to be either number one, paying cash, or number two, getting a non-traditional loan that's going to come with a much higher interest rate and likely not so favorable terms. Now, the reasons that buildings can make it onto this condo blacklist are number one, because of their financials, or number two, because the building's not in great physical condition and they haven't kept up with the maintenance. And I'm sure there's a lot of buildings that are on that list for both reasons, to be honest. But you know, there's another big problem with being on this list as well, which we'll talk about, but it's also the fact that you can't also refinance your unit if you're on this list unless you're gonna go for a non-conforming loan, and that can cause problems for people financially as well. Check this out, guys. The weather was so crazy out here, the beach was so crazy, it washed, I don't know, whatever you call this little hut that they store like the beach chairs and stuff and all that, put it right in the water. That's how strong this storm was. Up in Massachusetts, like I said, a couple of law firms got their hands on this condo blacklist, and basically they're trying to help people navigate whether or not their condo is on this blacklist, first of all, because they're not sharing it with anybody. And it seems like they're getting it from an unofficial source, so we don't even actually know if it's how accurate this list even is. They said that they will not release the list publicly because doing so could harm the condo's reputations and potentially lower property values, creating liability issues. Now, on the one hand, I kind of agree with that. You know, it gives them a little bit of integrity from the point of view like, hey, we don't want to completely out these condos, and then people that own these places see their values sink overnight. However, it's kind of just like delaying the inevitable because people are going to find out who's on this list eventually as more and more people can't get loans in the building. And naturally, it's going to work itself out to where that if somebody wants to buy there, they're going to know it's on that list because they're going to go to buy it and they're going to say, oh no, you have to pay cash. You can't get financing here. Oh, well, why not? Because we found out the condo's on the blacklist and you have to get either a non-conforming loan or you have to pay cash. Also, Fannie Mae won't make the list public either, maybe for the same reasons, I don't know. But clearly the law firm has their own interest in not making it available because this is a source of revenue for them. If they have their hands on this list and they can help potential condo buyers or sellers legally navigate getting on or off this list, and they have obviously a financial interest in keeping it a secret as well. But you know, the problem is if you live in a building or you own a unit in a building that is on this list, because the list is so secret, nobody knows how to get on or off of it, guys. Like, nobody knows what exactly put them on the list. Nobody knows how to get them off the list. And this is where the biggest problem with this lies right now. So it's really not fair to people that live in these buildings or own units there, or even the buyers that want to buy in these buildings, to not know outright if a building's on this list, because it wastes a bunch of time. First of all, if you're a buyer and then you find out 2 weeks into the transaction, this condo is blacklisted, you're not going to get the loan. Oh, I don't have cash to pay and I can't afford non-conforming loans, interest rate and payments, so I'm not buying the place. But meanwhile, you wasted time on a trip to the condo, you paid for the inspection, you paid for different things along the way to start your due diligence process, and in the end, it was a waste. And also for people who own these condos as well, it's a problem because, like I said, guys, how are you going to get off a list that you don't even know if you're on or why you're on it? That's kind of like the biggest issue. And check this out. Before the Surfside collapse, okay, there was about 1,770 condos nationwide on this condo blacklist. After that, it ballooned up to 2,308 just like a few months later. That's how fast things change, and that's how fast they don't want to write loans on these properties after something crazy like that happened. According to the law firm that has a copy of this list, they say about 35%, or about 800 properties on this list, are located in Florida. So for everybody out there who thinks, oh, it's just Florida that's on this blacklist and you can't get a loan, guys, think again. We're only 35% of the list. Now that is a healthy share of the list, I'm not gonna lie, but Florida's a big place and there are tons of condos here, you guys. I mean, there's well over 800 condo buildings just here in Miami alone. And so to put that into perspective, it's not like, you know, everybody in South Florida or in Florida in general is going to be on this list. Just the worst of the worst, most likely. Now, first of all, if you're a buyer and you come across a building that you find out is on this condo blacklist, it could be the good opportunity for you to run in the opposite direction, guys, because if Fannie Mae won't lend there due to their financial or physical condition of the building, that's probably you dodging a bullet and probably a safe sign that you shouldn't move forward with the deal unless you can get verification from the board and the management office that, hey, listen, we're going to be doing all these repairs. We already have collected the money for it. You know, we're just waiting for, you know, construction to commence, things like that. If they're actively doing something about it, but they're just kind of stuck in the middle, then maybe that could be the reason to still move forward with the transaction. But especially if it's financially related, you should probably walk away and dodge that bullet while you can, because if you decide to move forward with buying a place like that, even though the building's upside down financially, guess who's going to be paying for those shortfalls? It's going to be you. And it's already tough to get a loan at a condo anyways, because you already have to face things from the lenders like how much do they have in reserves, how many units are owner occupied versus rentals, does the building have any lawsuits pending, you know, are there any structural or construction issues at the moment? You know, all these things are already existing obstacles to buying a condo, and this Fannie Mae blacklist just made it worse. So once again, the condo crisis gets worse and continues to be a problem for people who want to buy or sell a condo. So a couple problems exist with this. First of all, if you're on this list and you find out you're on the list, there's no way to actually appeal or officially get off the list. So you don't know why you're on the list, you don't know how to get off the list, and even if you found out how to get off the list, you still can't get off the list because there's no way to talk to anybody at Fannie Mae who's in charge of this, which is, talk about government secrecy, is kind of crazy, guys. Freddie Mac, they kind of do the same thing when it comes to their underwriting, but instead of having a list, they give lenders an app where they punch in the info for the condo and they'll tell them whether or not they'll back the loan there. So they kind of have a list / database that's connected to this app, and they'll approve or deny it based on that. Now, starting in 2025, all of these condos are going to have a reserve study done, and they need to have reserves set aside to cover 100% of the anticipated structural work from the building. And a lot of people are saying this is going to make some of these buildings go bankrupt, guys, and I completely agree, because I have been to all of these buildings up and down the beach here that you guys are seeing in this video. And let me tell you, a vast majority of them are not run well and do not have the money to pay for big structural problems if they have them. Only up until recently, some buildings have been getting their act together and actually keeping reserves on hand rather than voting to, have no reserves every year to keep their HOA fees lower. But the problem is, it's kind of like all these buildings are getting hit hard all at once, right? We're getting hit with the huge increases in insurance that everybody is faced with right now. And that's already enough to bankrupt some owners to the point where they need to sell, right? Then you have increases in utilities and expenses and payroll and things that increase the actual HOA fee as well that we have to contend with. And that's before even talking about any special assessments and meeting these reserve studies. And I guarantee you, a lot of people are going to be selling these condos in these buildings because they simply are not going to be able to afford the amount of increase that they're going to have. I think this is going to be the biggest condo fire sale in our lifetime that we have ever seen, guys, because too many people are not well off enough financially to handle the increases that are coming down the pipeline. And the biggest problem is this is something that has been brewing over decades, right? Like, you have buildings where they haven't touched the place in like 40, 50 years, or just done the bare minimum in terms of maintenance to keep it going. And now the place is falling apart, It's on its last leg, and people have been paying $300 a month HOA fees for 40 years, and it's not cutting it anymore. So these situations with the condos are very similar to our government, where it's just too little too late, Like, they haven't done anything to fix the problems that we have, and it starts mounting over time, and it's to a point where it almost can't be fixed. Kind of like where we're at right now with our monetary policy and the interest rates and inflation, the upcoming recession. All of that is a result of decades of kicking the can down the road. And so the condos, they've done the same thing, and they're facing a similar day of reckoning. So you've had decades and decades of people paying too little, and now the next generation of condo owners are going to have to pay too much to make up for it. Well, first of all, I think there should be lawsuits from that. Just like there's lawsuits from everything else. If somebody wants to buy in a building and they find out is on this blacklist, and the people at the building haven't been paying their fair share to maintain it, and you find this out after the fact, maybe somehow you buy one of these places and find this out later on, the previous owner should have some kind of responsibility, guys, especially if they owned it for decades and decades and then they sold it to you. Sometimes the amount of work that has to be done on these places is just insurmountable, guys. Like this building behind me, for example, this place had to get new windows done. You can see it looks pretty nice now. They still have some of the plastic on some of these windows up there. They did the paint, they did the concrete restoration, right? All that stuff looks pretty nice, huh? Well, guess what? That place has been under construction for like 5 years. Imagine living with the nightmare of jackhammers every day, the dust and the noise, the construction crew hanging around day after day in your home, and that's what you got to deal with. On top of the higher costs, because you got to pay for all this stuff, so you have a higher cost of living and a lower quality of life. And that's what people in these buildings are facing. That's gonna be my number one reason, actually, for maybe wanting to sell my condo. Even though my building's in good shape financially, I don't want to deal with that, guys, because all of the buildings have to go through this eventually. They all have to go through concrete restoration and these big structural repairs to make sure things are good. And it just lowers your quality of life tremendously when you have to live in a place while that stuff is going on. This place right here was so bad, okay? It got shut down last year. I even made a video about it, guys. It was in the news where they had to evacuate everybody living at this place because they were worried that it might collapse, just like the Surfside building did. And in the end, obviously it didn't. They made some repairs, and about a month or two later, everybody was allowed to move back in. But now they have to go through all this effort to make sure the building is going to continue standing. It's not going to kill anybody, you know? Now these lawyers up in Boston that have access to this list, making anybody that contacts them about this to help with this legal issue, they need to sign a waiver in order to avoid liability issues and the law firm doesn't get sued over helping people with this. But the lawyers bring up a good point. They say that Fannie Mae has essentially created a catch-22 with this condo blacklist, because if they haven't made needed repairs or set aside sufficient money to cover the work, they now can't get Fannie Mae backed loans or financing to make the repairs. That means they will face having to pay more at a time when interest rates are high, and many condos have been pummeled by skyrocketing property insurance rates. Like I said, it's everything all at once that's getting hit with this. Inflation and interest rates have hit every single sector of the economy by now, and condo owners are feeling it, guys. The insurance, astronomical now. The cost of just running and maintaining the building is up substantially, at least 20%. If the building has any debt, especially if it's floating rate debt, that's gone up exponentially in terms of what the payments are. And so people who are not in a good financial position, it puts them in an impossible situation, because if you own a unit in one of these buildings that's blacklisted, and say you're hit with a $10,000 assessment, well, people like that, if they don't have the money, they can refinance the unit a lot of times, do a cash out refinance, and make that assessment payment. And if they don't want to do that, then they can sell the unit. But guess what? If you're on the blacklist, you can't do either one of those things. So that's a big problem. And like I said earlier, guys, the easy answer to this is a couple things. Like, number one, I think you're going to see a lot of condo terminations. You're going to see buildings get offered buyouts and just be torn down because they're really not worth saving. They're in too much disrepair, and it's going to be the better move to just do that. Owners that try to hang on through this crazy situation and think that the place can be fixed when there's millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of work are just dreaming, because most people that live in the building are not going to want to pay for it or have the money to pay for it. Also, I wouldn't say that it means that nobody's going to be able to sell these units anymore. It just means, number one, they're going to have to sell for a lot less money for people to either be able to pay cash for them or be able to get a non-conforming loan that comes with a higher interest rate and less favorable loan terms. So these condos are still going to be able to get sold, but they're not going to be selling for the premium price of yesteryear, which is why I think that's where the lawsuits come in, guys. Like, people got to milk these places for 40, 50 years and pay, next to nothing HOA fees, and turn around, sell the place for top dollar. Meanwhile, the next person totally gets screwed and has to pay for all this crap. So who's really responsible for that? It's the people that own the units for all this time before and didn't keep up with it, and now all of a sudden it's the new person's problem. And I actually have like a personal example here to share with you guys from one of my subscribers, Sarah. She sent me some of these pictures, which I'll put up on the screen for you guys, of this condo that she bought, and she only paid $70,000 for it, so at least it was a cheap condo, and she didn't pay a fortune for the place. The listing said the unit was updated. The seller supposedly had done an inspection, and she wrote an offer on the place sight unseen. She didn't go to the property, she didn't look at it before placing the offer. She said that competition is usually pretty high in this building because the price is so low, which means the return on investment is high. So 9 times out of 10, an investor will snap it up to turn it into a rental, which makes sense. So after her offer got accepted, she did a walkthrough on the property, and she didn't look too hard at anything because the inspection report was already done and it looked okay. Well, guess what? Because she trusted the seller's inspection report, she found out after the fact, after she bought the place, after the whole thing was closed, that there was a major water leak, okay? And the kitchen cabinets were completely rotted out, so everything had to come off. The wall underneath the sink was so soft to the touch that you could just stick your finger through it and poke a hole right through the wall. And this wasn't disclosed in the inspection report. The inspection did say that there was possible mold in the place. She didn't really see any at first glance, and just thought maybe it just needs a good gallon of kills, the paint that kills the mold. Obviously, the problem was much worse than that. But the home inspection report, she said, never disclosed any potential water leaks or any rotting walls, any rotting cabinets, anything like that. And so she trusted them and went through with the purchase. Well, her first reaction was to see if the HOA would cover this, and of course they don't, because it's inside her unit. And when you buy a condo, the inside of the unit is your responsibility, guys. Only the outside elements are covered by the HOA. Any problems inside your unit, that's always going to be your responsibility. She also was lucky enough to get a home warranty with the purchase, but number one, it's a consumer policy, and it doesn't start until after 30 days after she's owned and lived in the place. So this stuff is probably not going to be covered from the home warranty either. Now she wrote me and said, you know, Michael, luckily I have the money to fix this, and I might get an attorney and sue over it, or I might just accept that it's an expensive lesson, sell the place, and move on in a year or two. Now, that's an expensive lesson to learn, like she said, and this is just like the tip of the iceberg, guys. That's just the internal inspection with the unit, and depending on how bad the repairs are, like how much work still needs to be done that wasn't disclosed in the inspection, I would potentially sue, guys. If it was like 40, 50 grand and the inspector missed all this stuff, you could easily go after them for that. But if it's, you know, a smaller amount, that's going to be like small claims court stuff, it's not going to be worth it. You're better off just fixing it on your own. And this is not legal advice, by the way, it's just my opinion. But Sarah's story is a good example of how you really need to do your due diligence, especially when buying a condo, guys. You got to do, I mean, you should do this on every property, but there's an extra layer involved. Not only you need to show up at the home inspection, you need to make sure you check everything out completely thoroughly. It's even better if you have a friend that's like a contractor or somebody that knows their stuff with construction, can go with you, look at the place, make sure everything seems sound, you know, open all the cabinets, check everything out, the walls, the electric, plumbing, and all of that. And you have another layer of due diligence that needs to be done with the association. You need to make sure that you're checking out the building's meeting minutes for at least the past year, see what the board's talking about, see what kind of potential problems exist there that need to be addressed and how much it's going to cost. First of all, check out the building's annual budget. Are they in the red? Are they in the black? When I was in California, guys, I kid you not, I was out looking at properties every weekend to see what's out there, and I came across a property that was in Sausalito, California. I saw their budget for the next 3 or 4 years. Literally, for the past 2 years, they have been in the red, so they're losing money every year, and it was projected for the next 3 years that they would also be in the red. So guess what that means? The fees and costs to operate this place are going to be going up substantially, okay? And on top of that, the condo info disclosed that out of like the 40 residents that were there, 30 of them were in arrears and were not paying their maintenance dues on time. So those are things that you're just not going to discover if you don't do your due diligence and read the paperwork and disclosures that are given to you when you're buying a condo. And you need to make sure you request all this stuff. You can't rely on your real estate agent to just hand it to you on a silver platter and tell you everything is good to go, because I guarantee they're not reading that stuff. And you know what? It's not their job to read that stuff. They're not buying the condo. You are. You know, if people get this idea that it's the real estate agent's job to make sure the condo is financially and structurally sound before you buy it, no, it isn't, guys. The real estate agent's job is to find the place for you and write the offer and make sure you can carry that contract to closing. That's it. That's the only responsibility the real estate agent has. So do not rely on them to make sure the building is in good financial and structural shape on your behalf. So if anybody out there that owns a condo or is looking to buy a condo, if you find out that the building that you own in or you're looking in is on this blacklist, let me know, guys. Let me know any stories you find out about this, because this is a very fascinating thing that kind of just recently popped up, and it's going to have huge implications on the condo buying process nationwide, guys, because like I said, there's like 2,300 condos on this list. Only 800 of them are in Florida, which is a lot, obviously, but the lion's share are still spread out in other states across the country. So if you hear anything about this, let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.